Today I want to talk about something that I know a lot of you are a little uncomfortable with, and that is structure. I get it. The word sounds oppressive, almost clinical, like it's something that you're being forced to do. But I promise you, it's not like that at all. It's not a cage that your story has to fit into. It's more of a skeleton that you can build your story on top of, using your own parts, your own DNA. I promise you, this is something that will help your story evolve. It will do nothing but improve your story, I promise. Two books that have really helped me kind of understand this are Story Genius. Let me see if I can find the author's name. Story Genius by Lisa Cron. That book helped me understand the importance of your antagonist or your protagonist, and we'll come back to that. And the other is Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and that one's by Jessica Brody. I'll be referencing both of those books a lot, so just if you can get your hands on them and read them, I would definitely recommend that. So I'm going to start with what the structure of Save the Cat looks like, just really quick. You've got 15 beats, and I know this looks overwhelming at first, and I totally understand that. We're going to go through these beats in a second. But just know that when you're writing your first draft, you really only have to focus on these 6. They're single scene beats. They're really easy to pump out. And again, what you're doing is you're taking ideas that you already have and you're using structure to give them life. So it's not changing anything about your story. It's only improving your story. And so in terms of this beat sheet, what you've got to understand is that the plot does not dictate your protagonist. In fact, it's the other way around. Your protagonist dictates your plot. And there's a really interesting story that Lisa Cron tells at the beginning of Story Genius, and I'm sure I'm going to get some parts wrong, but the heart of it is this. Listen to these two stories and think about how they're different. So one story, we've got a scientist, and she's brilliant. She's in Mensa. She's been a genius her whole life. She's got her own small lab, and she's discovered this bacteria that is going to basically turn into a pandemic. Think of like Ebola meets The Walking Dead, something like that. And she has to get the word out immediately. But as she's uploading her data and she's trying to share it with the world, the internet goes out. That's a big story, right? That's a big story. But alternatively, imagine a story about a guy who has, contrary to his parents' advice, spent his life in their basement learning how to code and program, and he's a huge gamer, spends all day in chat rooms and whatnot, plenty of online friends, and he wants to prove to his parents that he can live like this. He doesn't need the outside world. He doesn't need the real world. He ends up getting an amazing job. He can afford tons of stuff. He's living a lavish life. He's ordering takeout every day. He's buying whatever he wants to get delivered straight to his house. And he tells his parents, look at this. I've done this. You're wrong. I can live like this. In fact, I'm going to get you guys tickets to this luxury cruise. I'm going to send you guys on a vacation and just enjoy it. And he sends his parents off. He has the whole house to himself. He's ordering his favorite food every day, playing his favorite games, chatting with his friends. And then the internet goes out. I mean, immediately you feel so much more impact in the second story, even though it is a much smaller story. It's big to him. And that's kind of something you really need to keep in mind as you're writing your skeletal beat sheet. And again, the skeletal beat sheet is just these 6 that I've circled in red here. Those are single scene beats. But I'm going to go ahead and go over each one of these, all 15, just to kind of give you an idea of how the beat sheet works, like what it is and how it functions. It's a series of setups and payoffs, right? Things that happen to your protagonist and then how they react to it. And it's that cycle over and over with building intensity and, increasing action as you go on through the beat sheet. All right. So the first beat that we have, and this is a single scene beat, the hook. This is probably the most important scene in your entire story. And being so, you should probably wait to write it until you've written the other beats. It's something you're going to want to keep coming back to, and it serves as the first domino to kind of set off the story into a course of action. It is not the catalyst. Do not confuse it with the catalyst or the inciting incident. It is not that. It's more of a before snapshot of your story. Of your main character. It can be other things. So like Jurassic Park, the hook is not directly related to any of the characters. It just kind of shows like the caged dinosaurs and kind of captures that sense of like mystery and awe. And that works, but it can also have your main character. I think it should have your main character. Your protagonist should be the center of the story, and I think they should be present in the hook. But there's a lot of different ways you can handle it, and there's no right way. And the reason the hook is so important is if people get tired or bored in this scene, they're not sticking around for the rest of the cool shit that you have written and the cool shit that you have planned. They're not even gonna see it. So your hook has to be amazing. It has to be one of the best scenes in your entire story, which is why I would say do not worry about writing it first or drawing it first. You can come back to it, and you should come back to it over and over and over until it is your favorite scene, So write just about everything else first. Get to know your characters first. Get to know the story first, and then come back to this beat. So the second scene after that, this is all going to fall under the umbrella of your setup, is the theme stated. Now the theme stated should come again during your setup at some point, and it is or at least it hints at your character's arc. So it'll typically come from someone that they really don't take seriously, or just have it be like a small side comment like, hey, you need to be more responsible, and then the main character just blows it off and it totally ignores it. But this is a super important beat in the story that again comes sometime during your setup. Your setup is a multi-scene beat, and you really want to showcase your main character and their current life. So their before life. You want to show them at work, at home, and at play. You want to show how the theme that they have not learned is negatively affecting their life. So your job in the setup is to show how fucked up your character's life is, how bad things are for them, show all of the things that need fixing in their life, and again, to show how their broken compass, so the thing that they do not understand about the world, or the lie that they believe, the theme that they have not learned, is screwing up their life in as many ways as possible. You don't have a ton of time in this beat, but you do want to kind of emphasize the need. Well, you want to hit very hard on the need for change, the need for your character's life to improve. All of the terrible things that are happening, you want to showcase all of that, and again, what it is that your main character has yet to learn or has yet to take seriously. So the next beat is going to be the second single scene beat. This is the catalyst. This is the inciting incident. This is kind of the event, the thing that happens to your hero that forces them to reconsider and makes it impossible for them to go back to their status quo, like, setup world. You really want this beat to be big. You want this to really leave your audience wondering, like, oh man, like, what are they gonna do? And that brings us to the next beat, which is a multi-scene beat, and this is the debate. This is where your character has to decide how they're going to handle what happened to them at the catalyst. And the catalyst is typically a call to action, and you see in this debate beat normally a resistance to that call or a rejection of that call. They do not want to do what is obvious that they need to do. And you can handle this a couple different ways. Like, if it's really obvious in your catalyst what your main character is going to do, and there's just no question that they're gonna do it, this beat can also act as a preparation beat where they're gathering resources or preparing to do the thing that they have to do that the catalyst calls for. And again, this is a multi-scene beat. And so an important part of this beat is to show your hero's reluctance to change. They do not want to learn the theme. They don't care. They're not interested. Yeah. All right. So break into 2. This is a single scene beat. Very important. This is when they decide to try a new way of being, to try on a new mask, to answer the call that the catalyst necessitates. To venture out, so there's no turning back after the break into 2. They are changed in some way, even if they were to attempt to go back to their pre-catalyst world. And this marks the break into Act 2. That's why it's called the break into 2. Act 1 consisted of all of the stuff from your hook all the way up to the end of the debate. And this again marks that crossing over, that point of no return into the Act 2 world. And it's also important to emphasize here that where the catalyst was something that happened to your hero, the break into 2 is them taking action, them doing something. All right, so at this point we are about a quarter of the way through our story, and we arrive at what is called the B story. Here, this is after the break into 2, your main character meets a new character, a helper character, that will help them learn the theme. Now this could be not only a person, but a group of people. It could be more than one person. It could be a new friend, a new antagonist or rival kind of thing. It could be a love interest. It could be a lot of different things, but the point is that the B story character will help them ultimately learn their theme. All right, so then we've got a multi-scene beat called the Fun and Games. This is a very large chunk of your story, and this beat delivers on the promise, right? So like, this is why people pick up your book or your story in the first place. This shows them in this new world that they've chosen to engage, and they're either loving it and doing great, or they're hating it and they're having a really bad time. So that brings us to our next beat, which is undoubtedly one of the most important beats in the entire story, which would be the midpoint. The midpoint is very interesting, very important. This represents an escalation of the story. It can be a twist, but what it does is it clarifies to the protagonist what they are up against. It's not what they expected. It is much worse in many ways. And I've heard this being referred to as a false victory or a false defeat. something happens here to raise the stakes and push your hero towards real change, towards actually learning the theme. They don't actually fully learn the theme here, but something happens that pushes them in that correct direction. And I've also heard that this is also a good time to start a countdown, to like start a ticking clock and make it clear that your protagonist doesn't have much time left. And this is right around 50%. So this is right around the exact center of your story. All right, and that brings us to the 10th beat, which is the bad guys close in. So this is, you really begin to feel the pressure in this. This is a multi-scene beat, whereas the midpoint was a single scene beat, a very, very important single scene beat. The bad guys close in is a multi-scene beat. If your character was doing well and loving the upside down world of the fun and games, then likely your midpoint would be a false victory, and your bad guys close in will be a downward spiral. It will begin kind of that closing in sequence and feeling of your character and all of their internal and external bad guys closing in on them, and ultimately your protagonist having to come to terms with the results or the consequences of not learning the theme. And this leads us to one of the other most important single scene beats in the entire story, the all is lost. So this is where, this is an action beat typically, where your hero is pushed to rock bottom. The internal and external bad guys have now joined forces to put your character in the worst possible position. They must be worse off than they were at the start of the story. This is a very, very important beat. Super important to get this beat right. And that brings us to the Dark Night of the Soul. So if the catalyst was an action beat and the debate was a reflection beat, same with this. The all is lost. It's the worst possible thing that could have happened to your hero, and again, that's happened to them. The Dark Night of the Soul is them reflecting on that and realizing that they are now, again, worse off than they were at the beginning of the story. This pushes them one step closer to finally learning the theme. And there is often what's called a Dark Night Epiphany, where your hero realizes what they must do in order to solve the problem, learn the theme, and ultimately get what they want. And that is what pushes us into Act 3, which is the 13th beat, the break into 3. This is where your hero realizes everything that they need to do in order to fix the problems that were created in Act 2, and more importantly, to learn the theme and fix themselves. And that knowledge of what they need to do brings us to the finale. This is where your hero finally proves that they have learned the theme, and they do what they've needed to do all along to defeat both the external bad guys and their internal demons, So I've heard it described as, in the setup, you want to establish sort of the shard of glass that is under the skin of your protagonist, and how that broken compass or that trauma is affecting their decisions throughout the entire story. Well, the finale is when they finally pull that shard of glass out and do what they were previously unable to do. This is where they finally enact the plan that they came up with in the break into 3. And that finally brings us to the last beat, the 15th beat, which is the closing image, or the denouement. This is an inverse, a complete inverse to the hook or the opening image, where we show the hero now in a world that is fixed. The bad guys are conquered. Their flaws are repaired. Families are reunited, and the world is a much better place. And this shows who your hero is after they've gone through their epic, hopefully satisfying transformation. So there it is. I mean, that's the roadmap. That's the blueprint for a satisfying and compelling character arc, and complete character arc. This has helped me so much. I can't even, I can't put it into words. I was just fumbling around my story for over a year, not sure where to go, not sure how to really address the character arc or the changes that I wanted my character to go through, not sure how to pace and how to space the story. But this like, my story is unchanged. Like, I didn't have to sacrifice anything. All I had to do was use this structure to mold my story onto it. You don't have to make any sacrifices. That's the best thing about plotting and structuring, is that it only improves your story. There's nothing to be afraid of. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm still taking writers that are struggling. Reach out to me if you want any help, or if you want any tips for writing. I can go through a walkthrough of your story and try to help you do something similar to what I did and give structure to your story. All right, adios. See you guys later.